They protect a world that fears and hates them, despite the fact that 90% of them look like swimsuit models with awesome superpowers. Yeah, no, I never understood that. Now, don't get me wrong, I like the X-Men as much as the next guy. But it's hard for me to buy that people just blindly hate mutants when so many of them look like and have powers that are nearly indistinguishable from any other run-of-the-mill non-mutant superhero. So whenever the X-Men do make their way to the MCU, I think it's time to bring in some new and different faces. And preferably some weird and bizarre faces too. Let's start the list with a relatively normal character and then get a little more weird as we go. The Morlocks are a community of mutants who have chosen to live underground far away from humans. They've gotten into a number of conflicts with the X-Men over the years due to their tendency to steal from the surface world, or outright attempt to bomb it like Marrow did before Storm tore out her heart to stop it. And somehow this act of villainy resulted in her joining the heroes' team for a while. Because what's a little bomb threat and violent death between friends, right? Marrow stood out from the majority of the active X-Men at the time in that her powers made her look comparatively grotesque. You see, due to suffering from extreme excess bone growth, she always had gross-looking bones sticking out everywhere in her body. Granted, she could then tear those out and use them as knives and was a vicious combatant, but it definitely gave her some insecurities and anger issues regarding her appearance and others' reaction to it. Hell, she could make Wolverine look tame on occasion, and seeing the two's wild natures butt heads on the big screen could potentially be interesting. But, like I told you, we're just getting started. Imagine having a burning sensation in your throat. Except you also don't have a lower jaw and your entire torso is permanently on fire. That's the daily life of Jonathan Starsmore, also known as the mutant called Chamber. The ability to shoot flames from your mouth sounds good on paper, but it's kind of a problem when you can't turn it off and you end up walking around with an exposed ribcage. Well, at least he's gotta be handy to have around on a camping trip. Now, don't worry about it, Jono isn't actually in pain from this, and he doesn't even need to eat, drink, or breathe in order to survive. But it must be pretty inconvenient to have everything from your nose to your crotch being constantly on fire. Thankfully, his fire is psionic in nature, meaning that Chamber can speak to people by communicating telepathically. Sure, he may seem a bit jerkish and standoffish on occasion, but you'd probably be too if you were a descendant of Apocalypse, whose reappearance in the MCU Chamber's presence could very well potentially set up. Nonetheless, Jono's heart is in the right place. Completely and permanently engulfed in psychic flames. Now you may look at Maggot here and think, oh, it's a guy with blue skin and super strength? Well, big deal, blue X-Men are a dime a dozen. And you'd be right, but that's not the weird part. Born in South Africa, Japheth grew up in a poor family and struggled with constant intense stomach pains. Thinking it was cancer and not wanting to burden his family, Japheth went into the desert with the intent to kill himself, but was then discovered by Magneto, who soon found out exactly what was up with the boy's stomach. As it turns out, Japheth had what might be one of the strangest superpowers ever. Namely, a pair of robot slugs in place of a proper digestive system. Whenever he needs to feed, they'll burst out of his body, munch on anything nearby and return to him, closing the wound behind them and boosting his strength with the energy from whatever they just ate. And turning his skin blue while they're at it. Yeah, dinner parties must get interesting when this guy's around. Oh, and he named his slugs Eenie and Meanie. Do you think if he had two more, he'd call them Miney and Mo? You think these guys got it bad? Then meet Beak. Or Barnell Bohusk if you prefer, because this poor guy definitely needed that name on top of this face. Poor Beak was essentially created to prove that, well, not every mutant gets to be Wolverine. Some end up stuck looking like a chick that popped out of its egg too early and don't even get a platter of awesome superpowers to play with. Needless to say, all of this made Beak feel pretty crappy about himself for a good long while in the comics, and it just goes to show some of the downsides of living in a superpowered world. It's not all bad for Beak, however. He's actually had a surprisingly strong superhero career in the comics. One of Beak's most noteworthy roles was as a longtime member of the Exiles, which was a team of multiverse-displaced heroes who fixed realities that were about to go horribly wrong. Now, if only the MCU would start exploring the multiverse. Oh wait! Even after losing his powers and becoming a regular human, he simply got himself a flight suit and joined the New Warriors under the name Blackwing, proving that he was a hero first and a mutant second. He's back to looking like a chicken nowadays, though. Comics. Normally it's supervillains who end up as brains in a jar, not young girls like Martha Johansson who had her brain forcefully yanked out by the U-Men. Now confined to a floating bubble, no girl communicates only through telepathy. And through her best friend, the little powerhouse known as Ernst, who usually speaks for her. Yeah, you can say I'm cheating by having two characters in one entry, but seriously, these two are a package deal. Now, if you're an anime fan, you might take one look at Ernst and her old lady face and assume she's psychic, like those kids from Akira. Well, you're wrong. Instead, her mutant ability is apparently super strength. Now, I say apparently because, well, we don't usually get to see it in action. There is this running gag in the comics where Ernst's displays of super strength always happen off-screen when the issue's focal character is distracted. And there's just something entirely too awesome about occasionally glancing over to this strange-looking little girl and then realizing she just completely destroyed a wall or something. No girl does actually later get a proper body and rebrands herself as Cerebella, but come on. A floating brain hanging out with an elderly-faced young girl is so much more visually interesting, and it's a heartwarming example of friendship in the midst of adversity. Marvel, if you ever bring these two to the big screen, don't be cowards. Give us the floating brain. Did you ever notice that the Marvel Universe has a surprising amount of superhero lawyers? There's Daredevil and She-Hulk, of course, but considering that the X-Men own a school that's the constant target of hate crimes, it's really no wonder that they have a lawyer of their own. Enter Evangeline Whedon, the X-Men's official lawyer. And also a goddamn dragon. Well, she needs to touch some blood in order to trigger the transformation, but all the same, I must repeat. She turns into a goddamn dragon! Now, technically speaking, Evangeline isn't really a member of the X-Men in the put on a superhero outfit and go beat up Sentinels like it's your day job sense, but she does handle all of their legal battles. This isn't so strange considering that she herself got shafted pretty hard by just about everyone when her own mutation was made public. In less than a day after being outed as a mutant, Evangeline was fired from her job, evicted from her apartment, and disowned by both her boyfriend and her family. Not one to let this defeat her, Evangeline then joined the Mutants' Right Coalition and started kicking ass in the courtroom. Oh, and did I mention she's goth? Oh yeah, you heard me right. She's an attractive goth girl that turns into a big scary dragon. I can already hear the fan artists sharpening their pencils. Now, we've had some grotesque looking mutants on our list so far, but Glob absolutely takes the cake. Looking like a mess of bones and guts within a vaguely human-shaped blob of wax, it probably comes as no surprise that Robert Herman's life has been rough. Raised by an anti-mutant bigot father, Robert was constantly dragged along to hate rallies, only to end up receiving horrific physical abuse once he himself mutated. As a result, Glob turned to villainy, joining groups like the Omega Gang and the Hellfire Club and being all too eager to kill people. But time and the support of the Xavier Institute had been very kind to Glob, and today that angry young man is mostly gone. Nowadays, he's more of a pacifist and tries his hardest to solve every conflict he gets into as non-violently as possible. Not to say his mutation doesn't come with some perks. On top of being super strong, Glob's unique body makes it very hard to actually hurt him, and he is completely unharmed by fire and heat. And if you think that doesn't sound effective for fighting supervillains, then just imagine this guy running at you while on fire. And then try not crapping yourself on the spot. Some mutants get awesome mutant names fitting their amazing powers. Wolverine, Colossus, Nightcrawler. Trevor Hawkins, however, he has a lot of eyes and gets called Eye-Boy. The X gene can be cruel like that sometimes. At first, Eye-Boy was one of the prime examples of a mutation that straight up just sucks. I mean, think about it, having eyes all over your body basically just means you're covered in weak spots. And sure, he had telescopic vision, but that's a very situational power. Or at least it was until he realized what else he could see. Eye-Boy is capable of seeing many things that other people can't, like radio waves, energy currents, thought patterns, emotional energies, micro-expressions. I mean, really, if we try to list them all, we'll be here until Christmas. But it would be kind of nice to see some characters in the MCU with superpowers that may not be combat efficient, but are nonetheless very helpful. This guy's mutant name used to be Goldballs. Yeah, no, that's it. That's the whole segment. Alright, fine, I'll tell you a little more. You might look at Fabio Medina here and think he's just a regular dude. I mean, sure, I could talk about how his power to shoot giant golden balls from his chest is weird and goofy, but it's not quite as strange as my tummy is made of robot slugs. But that's just surface level stuff. Fabio's powers are actually pretty interesting. Those gold balls of his, they're actually eggs. Eggs that can revive dead mutants. Because of this, Fabio not only changed his codename to Egg, which isn't really any easier to take seriously than Gold Balls to be honest, but also joined the Five. To give a little bit of context, the Five is a group of mutants otherwise consisting of Hope Summers, Elixir, Proteus, and Tempest, who have been tasked with using their powers to resurrect as many mutants as they possibly can. Oh, and he's friends with Miles Morales and Genki Lee. Supporting character in a future Spider-Man movie, maybe? Come on, Marvel, get weird with it! Okay, so since I've already technically mentioned 10 X-Men on this list, I'm gonna use this entry to bring up an X-Men villain, because this guy is just too much fun to pass up. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you, Sauron. Nope, not that one. although he is named after him. After a trip to the Savage Land, Carl Lycos mutated into a half-pterodactyl man with a burning desire to turn all humans on Earth into dinosaurs. It sounds like something straight out of a really stupid Silver Age comic, and I can't help but love this big old goober because of it. I mean, just look at him. How awesome would it be to watch the X-Men fight this guy on the big screen? It would certainly be a quick way to set the tone for just how strange their world can be. Sauron's powers do include some bizarre things like breathing fire, hypnosis, and sucking out others' life force with a touch. But doesn't that sound a little bit out of place for a dinosaur man? You see, back when Sauron was first introduced, he was supposed to be more of a stereotypical vampire character, but due to the comics code still being in effect at the time, Marvel couldn't actually introduce horror-themed characters. So someone just slapped a beak and some wings on him and made him a dinosaur. Well, that and the fire breath. And quite frankly, I consider this an upgrade. This is just the tip of the iceberg when you dig deep into the Marvel Universe's mutant population. Trust me, if we count one-offs and background characters, things get so much weirder so fast. So what are some of your favorites among the more bizarre mutants out there? Let me know in the comments and let's cross our fingers that we get to see them in the future.